What's up, everybody? Cody Bidlow of SprintingWorkouts.com and ATHLETE.X. Just had a good workout out here in beautiful Goleta, California. Wonderful day, and happy to be out here. So, one thing I want to talk about today is the concept of how you progress your volume. You know, your body is going to get used to the volume of work that you do and the intensity of work that you do in your training. Over time, we need to intensify our training if we're doing a short to long program or a long to short program. And how you do that is going to be how you progress the distances, the volumes, the rest periods, and things like that. Early in your year, when you're in your off season and general prep phase and that sort of thing, you can get a high volume of sprints in. They don't need to be super long. You could have shorter sprints on your intense day and then longer runs, I guess you could say, on your off days or your recovery days in the form of tempo running. The tempo running can cover your longer distances like 100, 150, 200, or 300, depending on what you like to do, while the short sprints might be 30s, 60s, but they're going to be done in a repeated fashion to where you're doing a fairly high number of reps, and the overall speeds are going to be slower, largely due to the number of sprints that you're doing. But you can also do things like what Charlie Francis would do, where you set an acceleration limit, such as at 10 meters in your first week, where you only accelerate through 10 meters, but you're still running repeated 60s, so you're just maintaining that last 50. And then over time, you might progress to 20, 30, 40, all the way up to a 60-meter acceleration zone, where you're going all out, all the way. And as you do that, the intensity of those workouts is going to rise because you're accelerating to a higher velocity. The volume of those workouts need to drop in order to accommodate that increase in intensity. And over the course of a season, you will see that your intensity gradually rises, your volume, at least of your intense work, gradually drops. And if you do it in a way to where you're not having these drastic changes, you're going to have a much more predictable performance week in and week out, because your body gets accustomed to a certain amount of work. And then if you're sort of on the same schedule as well, it gets accustomed to a certain rhythm of when you need to be, putting out a high effort or a high intensity, which is not always the same thing. Whereas if your volumes are all over the place and your intensities are all over the place, but especially your volumes, your body doesn't know what to expect. And I think that you're less likely to get consistent, predictable adaptations if your body doesn't know what to expect and it can't get used to a certain volume of work before you make a change. How you can incorporate this is making sure that when you set out your plan for training, that you start at a certain volume and you hang out there for a while, and then you gradually reduce that volume as you gradually intensify the sprints that you're doing, the lifts that you're doing, the plyos, and all that. And if you can stick to a more gradual progression in your training of the volume and the intensity, you will probably find that your performances improve similarly to that change in intensity that you're putting out on the track. So as far as today's workout, I came out, I did just a general warm-up. I felt like I needed a little bit more of a warm-up today, so I did that. By the way, I have not eaten today, and it is 1:19, so this is a completely fasted workout, but I feel great, so, just got to roll with it sometimes. So I did the general warm-up, did some accelerations in my shoes. I did some drills before those accelerations, mainly working on getting my hamstrings to activate, feeling myself getting that leg down and back to the track. Then I went and did some leg swings, some high hurdle hops. This time, instead of doing a standing start, I did a walking start to get a little bit more horizontal velocity. And I think I reduced the ground contact times a little bit, but I'll have to go look at that once I'm done here. After that, I did some accelerations in spikes. The main focus today was I wanted to bounce through the whole run. I wanted to feel like from the very beginning of the acceleration, I was using elasticity to come off the ground, not fighting and working hard and really putting a lot of effort into it. I would rather bounce my way off the track because that is more economical and you get, just a better performance out of it. And you'll see when I tell you what the splits were today that it worked. So I did those bouncy accelerations. Then I did one sub-maximal flying sprint from 30 to 60 just to kind of make sure I was good to go. I ran 3:09 without, really trying. Actually, sorry, 4:09 because I went from 30 to 70. I measured it out. So I just cruised at 4:09, said okay. So I threw my blocks down at the opposite start line of the track because there's not much wind today, but it is blowing this way, so I'd rather run with the wind. Why wouldn't you? Especially at this point in the year. Set up the blocks, ran a 70. I ran 392 to 30 meters. I ran 688 to 60 meters, and I ran, I think, 788 to 70 meters, something like that. So pretty good day as far as on those shorter sprints. Then I added one more. I did 120 from blocks straight the whole way. Now you can probably see behind me, there's not a lot of room to slow down over here. So the last 20 of the 120, I had to kind of cool it a little bit, take my foot off the pedal, and just kind of coasted through the line. I ended up running 12.90 over the 120, and had I had a little bit more room to slow down, I'm sure that would have been a 12.8 something. So that's a really good sign, because I haven't run that fast in a while over a 120. But even more promising was the fact that I maintained the same 30-meter split between 40 and 70 meters and 70 and 100 meters. And to me, my ability to perform relatively well in the 100, relative to myself at least, I need to have good speed endurance, because I'm never going to be the best guy to 30 meters. I weigh more than most of the athletes I'm running against. Even though I can accelerate fairly well, I'm not the best starter out there. So for me, I need to make sure that my speed endurance is on point. And I think the fact that I was emphasizing bouncing through the run rather than trying to whack the ground or trying to really put a lot of force into the ground, I just tried to bounce my way from the start through the whole run. It allowed me to be more economical and maintain my speed all the way from 40 meters to 100 meters. Typically, I'll run an okay flying sprint, or a split time between 40 and 70 meters, like low 2.9s, high 2.8s, something like that is kind of like my average / good average. But then I'll drop off significantly after that. Like I'll run a 3.05 or something like that. Whereas today I maintain the same split from 40 to 70 and 70 to 100, which tells me that one, the workouts I've been doing are working, because I've been focusing more on speed endurance. And then on top of that, that my approach to how I ran that run is also working, because all of a sudden I was at 120 meters. Obviously I felt it after the run, but during the run it didn't feel like I was working very hard. It looks pretty relaxed on the film, and the times were good, especially the drop off from between the two 30-meter segments at the end of the sprint, or middle end of the sprint, I guess you could say, end of the 100. I even split it from 40 to 70 and 71 to 100. So that's really good. Obviously I need to get my speed to improve, because 295 isn't going to cut it if I want to run the times I want to run. But it's a good sign that I'm able to maintain the speed that I have, because when I'm in a race, I'm probably going to hit a higher top speed than what I hit in practice. And as long as I use the same approach, I don't get, all mental, and I just maintain my technique and keep running, bouncing off the ground, I should run a nice time. So all in all, I would say it was a good workout. Anytime you're able to try to work on something and then you actually have that, thing you try to work on show itself and be realized in practice, that's a good practice, regardless of what the times are. And then on top of that, to be hitting good times, like 7.8s in the 70 is pretty good for me. I ran 10.84 to the 100, not bad, and 12.90 to the 120. Can't complain about that. I have gone back to my starting style that I used at the end of last year, which is a little less aggressive. Recently, I had made some changes to my start because I found that I could run a way faster 10 if I was in a more aggressive position, but I felt like it disrupted what I was doing in the middle and the end of the race. So I've gone back to a more traditional 2 and 3 type of setup. Feels more comfortable. I don't have to think about it. I just run, and the times are almost the same. I mean, I ran 392 to 30. My best is 386, and when I run that, I had a little more wind behind me. So all in all, I think, I don't need to do anything fancy with my start. I need to just start in a way to where I don't have to think. I can get out smooth, not waste energy, so that I have energy at the end of the race to maintain my technique and run how I need to run in order to run my best. Other people need to blast the start because that's their style and then just hang on, whereas I need to set myself up to run efficiently and effectively from 30 meters to 100 meters. So just to recap, it's really important that as you go through your year of training, you progress your volumes in a way that is gradual but consistent. You don't want to be bouncing all over the place with your volumes of work. You want to pick a volume that you can handle but might push you a little bit, pair it with the right intensity of work, which you're going to modify through the distances you choose, the rest periods you choose, the acceleration distances within those reps, and just how hard you go in general. and you want to progress that volume down over time from the GPP through the SPP into your pre-competitive and your competitive phases. That volume needs to gradually drop of that high intensity work you're doing. The intensity of that work needs to rise so that eventually you get to a point where your intensity is quite high, your volumes are lower than what you had been doing, but those progressions are done gradually and consistently over time, so that way you don't throw something at your body like all of a sudden a big jump in intensity out of nowhere, a huge drop in volume out of nowhere, or a huge jump up in intensity out of nowhere. You don't want to do that because you're going to shock your system and it's going to lead to less predictable progressions in your performance. We as track athletes want to have some predictability of our performances. You're not always going to be able to predict how you're going to do, but since we're in such a measurable sport where all that matters is how fast you can run all out, we want to have some predictability there so we can plan our competitions, plan everything out well. And I think it really helps if you are not chaotic with your volumes and your intensities, but you are more consistent and gradual with the adjustments you make. Pick a certain amount of volume, stick with it for a while, then gradually reduce it. Pick an intensity, stick with it for a while, gradually intensify the training. And if you do that over the long term and you don't get hurt, and you're being reasonable with the amount of work you're doing, and you have those progressions in place, then I think you're going to be in the best situation to run your fastest. So I hope this video helps. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you guys next time. This is Cody Bidlow with SprintingWorkouts.com and ATHLETE.X signing off.